So, like, if you look at the Eiffel Tower piercing the Paris skyline, right?
Mhm.
Or the Space Needle just looming over Seattle,
Mm.
you naturally assume they were built for eternity.
Oh, for sure. Like the pyramids.
Exactly,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the Colosseum or something. You think, somebody drafted those blueprints wanting to anchor their city forever.
Right. Like a permanent defiant statement in stone and steel.
Yeah, but then you dig into the source material for today's deep dive, and you realize the origin story of these iconic landmarks completely shatters that logic.
It really does.
Because we're actually looking at colossal monuments that were honestly meant to be torn down, like
Yeah.
sold for scrap after just a few months.
Yeah, they were literally just temporary pop-up tents.
Right, giant pop-up tents for international trade shows.
It is the absolute definition of accidental prominence. I mean, we build a temporary party venue, and then a century later, it's somehow the defining symbol of an entire nation.
It's wild. So today, we are stepping into this massive, multi-billion-dollar, high-stakes world of global expos.
Also known as World's Fairs.
Right. And we've got a huge stack of sources spanning centuries. So our mission today is to trace how these events morphed, going from these physical tech demos for the industrial age into massive nation branding exercises.
Things that literally dictate global diplomacy today.
Exactly. And we'll also uncover the architectural ghosts they leave hidden in plain sight in our cities. Because honestly, whether you realize it or not, you listening right now have almost certainly visited a city or walked through a public park.
Or snapped a photo of a landmark.
Yeah, a landmark that only exists because of a temporary, months-long World's Fair.
And, to really grasp why cities would endure all this chaos, the massive construction, the disruption, we have to look at the original motivation.
Right.
And the origin point in the sources is actually much earlier than the famous Victorian fairs most people picture.
Yeah, I was genuinely shocked by this when I was reading through. Because I always thought London.
London, 1851.
Right, the legendary Great Exhibition. I thought that was the one that started it all.
That's what everyone talks about.
But we're actually starting in Prague, in Bohemia, which is, what we now call the Czech Republic. And it was in 1791.
Way earlier.
George Washington is literally still the U.S. president at this point.
Yeah, it was a wildly different era. But the political mechanics were remarkably similar to today. This 1791 event was organized to celebrate a coronation.
King Leopold II, right?
Exactly, his coronation as the King of Bohemia. And they held it in this sprawling architectural complex called the Clementinum.
Okay.
But the organizers, they didn't just throw a royal banquet. They specifically built an industrial exhibition to showcase the sophisticated local manufacturing methods of the region.
See, that is such a calculated flex.
Oh, totally.
They're essentially telling all these visiting dignitaries, like, come celebrate our new king, but while you're here, take a look at our highly advanced regional supply chain.
Yeah, look at our industrial output. It
Yeah.
was entirely about validating Bohemia's economic relevance on the European stage.
Right.
But, you aren't completely wrong to bring up London earlier.
Because 1851 was huge.
Right, 1851 was the moment this concept was basically weaponized on a global scale. This was the great exhibition of the works of industry of all nations.
Catchy title.
Very catchy. Spearheaded by Prince Albert. And the sheer scale of it really kicked off the first major era of these events.
Which the sources call the industrialization era, right? Running from roughly 1851 to 1938.
Exactly.
And the architecture itself was part of the flex. They housed it in the legendary Crystal Palace in Hyde Park.
Oh, it's incredible.
A massive gleaming structure of iron and glass, which was in itself this huge technological marvel for the time.
And it set the baseline character for this entire era. So fairs in this window, like Chicago in 1893 or Paris in 1889.
Right.
They were fiercely focused on trade, raw technological advances, and state-of-the-art science.
I mean, you kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of a 19th century citizen here.
Yeah.
You don't just read about a new invention on a blog or, see a video of it on your phone.
No, not at all.
You travel to this sprawling exhibition hall alongside millions of other people, and you witness a machine transmit a human voice for the very first time.
It's mind-blowing to think about.
The telephone. Alexander Graham Bell literally introducing the telephone to the general public.
Right, at the 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia.
Yeah, the psychological impact of experiencing that in a crowded, buzzing hall, it's staggering.
It creates this collective societal memory of progress. It's not just a product launch. It's a cultural moment.
It's basically a 19th century CES wrapped in a massive world tour.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It brought unimaginable, futuristic technology directly to people who otherwise just couldn't travel to see it.
Exactly. But a physical showcase of technology, it sort of has a built-in expiration date.
Right, because eventually the future just becomes normal.
Exactly. As we move into the 1930s, the novelty really starts to wear off. Electricity is running to people's houses. The telephone is just a tool sitting in your hallway.
Right, so showing off a shiny new gadget simply wasn't enough to draw a crowd of, like, 50 million people anymore.
No, they needed something bigger. The core mission of the expo had to pivot dramatically.
Which brings us to the second era.
Right. The second era, running from 1939 to 1987, the global focus shifted entirely away from raw machinery.
And it moved toward cultural exchange and social progress.
Yes. The thematic shift is so stark here. We go from London's rigid works of industry to the 1939 New York World's Fair.
Where the theme was building the world of tomorrow.
Exactly. And then you fast forward to the 1964 New York Fair, and the theme is peace through understanding.
Wow. So it moves completely from hardware to philosophy.
Yeah, they were still sharing technological innovation, sure, but the framing was heavily social.
Like, how does this tech actually help people?
Right. It was about how mass transit, telecommunications, and urban planning could create a better, more unified global society.
Especially following the devastation of 2 world wars. That makes a lot of sense.
It was a very idealistic time for the fairs.
And actually, we get some incredible pop culture trivia out of this idealistic era in the sources.
Oh, the baseball thing.
Yes. The 1967 International and Universal Exposition in Montreal. They promoted themselves heavily under the shorthand name Expo 67.
Right.
And the term Expo had been floating around before that, but Montreal's marketing made it this globally recognized noun.
It just stuck.
It became so entrenched in the local identity that it literally gave the former Major League Baseball team their name.
The Montreal Expos.
Yeah, leaving a literal permanent legacy in the sports world.
Which is so funny. But, idealism only funds a mega event for so long.
Right. Eventually the bill comes due.
Exactly. So as we move past 1987, starting around the 1988 Expo in Brisbane, Australia, the tone shifts again.
Okay, so what era are we in now?
We enter the third era, which we are actually still in today, and it's all about nation branding.
Nation branding. Okay, I have to ask, how does a temporary building actually brand a nation? Like, what is the physical mechanism there?
Well, it really comes down to architectural soft power. National pavilions transformed into these literal, immersive advertising campaigns.
Wow.
They were designed to completely rewrite a country's global narrative. And the sources bring up this branding expert, Wally Olins, who points to a masterclass in this strategy.
Which was Spain in 1992, right?
Yes, exactly. Spain in 1992.
Because they hosted Expo 92 in Seville and the Summer Olympics in Barcelona in the exact same year.
Which is just a massive, massive undertaking for any country.
Seriously.
And the architectural choices at the expo were incredibly deliberate. Instead of heavy, imposing, brutalist structures.
Which might remind the international community of their authoritarian past,
Yeah.
under Franco.
Exactly. Instead of that, Spain leaned into open, modern, light-filled designs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The pavilions subconsciously signaled transparency, modernism, and a readiness to integrate into the European Union.
That is fascinating. They were literally physically building their new democratic identity for foreign investors to just walk through.
Exactly. It was a 3D physical rebrand.
Okay, I have to step in here, though, and push back on the financial reality of it.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the numbers in these sources are, frankly, breaking my brain a little bit.
They are pretty intense.
Let's look at the Expo 2000 in Hanover, Germany. Countries were investing an average of 12 million euros each.
Seems to build their pavilions.
Right. And some spent exponentially more than that. So my question is a temporary open concept glass building really worth tens of millions of taxpayer dollars just for like a good PR vibe?
That is the exact friction that makes modern expos so contentious. I mean, governments fight internally over this exact question all the time.
I bet.
But the sources do provide some fascinating hard data to counter that sticker shock.
Okay.
There was an independent study conducted on the Dutch pavilion at that same Hanover Expo.
Right, and the Dutch pavilion was one of the most ambitious ones there. It cost around 35 million euros to build.
Right.
For a temporary structure. 35 million.
A massive upfront cost, yes. However, the study estimated that this specific pavilion generated around 350 million euros in potential revenues for the Dutch economy.
Wait, okay, I am highly skeptical of that math.
A lot of people are.
35 million in, 350 million out. Potential revenues sounds like the fuzzy, made-up math a marketing department invents to justify throwing a massive, expensive party.
It does sound like that.
Like, how do they actually track a 10x return on a temporary building?
Well, it isn't just about selling tickets to tourists at the door, right? The pavilion acts as this high-stakes diplomatic VIP lounge.
Oh, okay.
While the public is walking through the art exhibits downstairs, trade delegations are upstairs in the private rooms.
Ah, the real business is happening behind closed doors.
Exactly. They are utilizing the buzz and the neutral, celebratory ground of the expo to finalize agricultural exports, sign B2B tech contracts, and just lock in long-term economic partnerships.
Wow.
So that 350 million figure, it's modeled on the concrete multi-year trade deals that were signed explicitly on the fairgrounds.
Okay, so it's essentially a massive trade show booth for an entire sovereign economy.
Yes, precisely.
But, I mean, if the ROI is actually that high, it creates a terrifying arms race, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
If every nation is spending 35 million euros to outbrand their neighbors, how does the international community prevent countries from literally bankrupting themselves over these temporary buildings?
Well, they realize that exact danger, which is why there are incredibly strict rules governing how these operate today.
Because it would just spiral out of control otherwise.
Exactly. So since the 1928 convention relating to international exhibitions, there has been an international sanctioning body.
The Paris-based Bureau International des Expositions, right? Or the BIE.
And they are just referees.
They're basically trying to prevent a global financial meltdown driven by architectural hubris.
That's a great way to phrase it. And that's precisely why they maintain a very rigid taxonomy of international exhibitions today.
Right.
The two main tiers you really need to know from the sources are World Expos and Specialized Expos.
Okay, let's break those down.
So, World Expos, formerly called International Registered Exhibitions, these are the behemoths. They last up to 6 months.
It's a long time.
It is, and the critical, grueling requirement here is that countries must design and build their massive pavilions completely from the ground up.
Which basically guarantees an architectural thunderdome.
Pretty much.
Nations want to build the most outstanding, memorable structure possible, which obviously drives those costs into the stratosphere.
Exactly, which is exactly why the second tier, the Specialized Expos, or International Recognized Exhibitions, exist.
And those are much smaller, right?
Right. They run between 3 weeks and 3 months, and the total surface area of the whole fair is strictly capped at 25 hectares.
Oh, wow. So it's a hard limit on space.
Yes. But the financial model is the real differentiator here. To level the playing field, the organizers of a Specialized Expo provide pre-built pavilion structures to the participating states.
Wait, really?
Yes, completely free of rent, charges, and taxes.
See, that is a brilliant mechanism.
It really is.
Because it means smaller or developing nations aren't just priced out of global diplomacy. They just have to customize the facade and fill the inside, rather than pouring millions into raw concrete and steel.
Exactly. It makes it so much more accessible.
But looking at the schedule and the sources, I noticed that since 1995, those massive world expos are strictly limited to happening only every 5 years.
Yes, that was a major shift.
Why pump the brakes so hard?
Yeah.
Because before that, they were happening pretty frequently.
Well, following a huge boom of expos in the 80s and 90s, the BIE saw deep financial fatigue setting in.
Ah, right. The arms race we talked about.
Exactly. Participating in a World Expo every couple of years was just draining national budgets. But the 5-year timeline serves a second, deeply pragmatic purpose.
Which is?
Specifically avoiding a direct clash with the Summer Olympics.
Oh, of course. You can't have the two largest global gatherings fighting each other.
No, you really can't. You'd have nations competing for the exact same international tourism dollars, the exact same global media attention.
And literally the same construction resources and cranes in the same window.
Right. It would be a total logistical nightmare.
That makes total sense. And just for the sake of completeness, we should probably note the BIE also recognizes 2 other niche types of expos.
Right, there are a couple others.
Like the horticultural expos. For example, the 2023 event in Doha that was focused entirely on green living and agriculture.
Yeah.
And then there's the semi-regular Milan Triennial, which is basically an art and design exhibition in Italy.
Yes. But, despite those, the massive 6-month World Expos are still the undeniable main event.
For sure. So we have these massive world expos, 6 months of global attention, billions of dollars spent. literal temporary cities built from scratch with wild experimental architecture.
Right.
But then the 6 months end. Tourists go home.
Right.
What actually happens to the physical space?
This is where we get into the architectural ghosts. The cleanup phase is perhaps the most visible part of the Expo story today.
I love this part of the sources because so many structures that were fully intended to be temporary novelties ended up becoming permanent global icons.
Yeah, it happens surprisingly often.
And there is no better example of this than the Eiffel Tower,
Oh, absolutely.
built as the entrance arch for the 1889 Paris Exposition Universelle.
Right, and today it is the defining symbol of France. But what always gets forgotten is the intense contemporary vitriol toward it.
All people hated it.
Critics absolutely despised it. They called it a tragic street lamp.
A tragic street lamp.
Yeah, and a monstrous metal skeleton that ruined the classic, elegant stone aesthetic of Paris.
That is so funny to think about now.
I know. There were aggressive petitions from the Parisian public and the artistic elite, demanding it be immediately dismantled and sold for scrap after the fair concluded.
Which was originally mandated in the contract.
Exactly, it was supposed to come down.
Imagine Paris successfully tearing down the Eiffel Tower in 1890. Like, it's unthinkable.
It really is.
But it survived.
Yeah.
And you see that same survival instinct with the Space Needle and the monorail in Seattle.
Oh, yeah. Both built for the 1962 Century 21 Exposition.
And they're still operating, still entirely defining the Seattle skyline.
Completely.
And then there's the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco.
That's a really unique case.
It is. From the 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition, the mechanics of how this building survived are just fascinating.
Because it wasn't built to last at all.
Not at all. It was built as a temporary structure,
Yeah.
heavily reliant on a faux stone plaster surface. They knew it wouldn't last.
Right.
And by 1964, it was quite literally a crumbling ruin. The plaster was just falling off in chunks.
So what did the city do?
Well, the city had formed such a deep emotional bond with this, like, melancholy, romantic piece of temporary art that they actually demolished the decaying framework and completely rebuilt the exact same structure in permanent concrete.
Just to keep the ghost alive.
Exactly. Just to save it.
It perfectly illustrates how a city's identity can anchor itself to a fleeting event. But, it's not just single monuments that stick around.
Right.
Entire sprawling sites get radically repurposed. Like in New Orleans, the main pavilions of the 1984 World's Fair were heavily retrofitted.
And converted into the Ernest N. Morial Convention Center.
Right, which tragically became globally famous decades later as a shelter of last resort during Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah. The physical footprint of that expo served a completely different, desperate civic need.
It's a heavy legacy.
It is.
Or, on a different note, look at the 2010 Expo in Shanghai.
Okay, what happened there?
The China Pavilion from that fair was this imposing, massive red structure, the largest display in the history of the event, actually.
Wow.
And after the fair, rather than tearing it down, they repurposed the cavernous interior to create the China Art Museum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is currently the largest art museum in Asia.
That's a great use of the space. But, if a host city doesn't want to keep a building, they don't always demolish it either.
Right, there's a third option.
The sources outline this bizarre logistical phenomenon where they literally pack up whole buildings and ship them across the globe.
The logistics of pavilion relocation are just mind-bending. Take the Belgium Pavilion from the 1939 New York World's Fair.
Okay.
After the fair closed, they painstakingly dismantled the architecture, transported it down the coast, and relocated it to Virginia University in Richmond, Virginia.
Wait, really?
Yeah, where it became a functional part of the campus.
You're just casually moving a piece of an international mega event to a college campus in Virginia? That is wild.
It is, but I think the most emotionally impactful example of relocation comes from the 2015 Expo in Milan.
Oh, the Save the Children Pavilion.
Yes, the Save the Children Italy Pavilion. It was built using simple, sustainable materials, and after the expo, it was taken down, shipped across the Mediterranean, and completely rebuilt in Lebanon,
Wow.
where it now serves as a functioning school for Syrian refugee children.
That is just incredible. That perfectly bridges the gap, I think.
Oh, you mean?
Well, it takes the multi-million-dollar PR budget of a World's Fair, and it redirects that physical output into a permanent, deeply meaningful humanitarian legacy.
It's a brilliant secondary use of the architecture, for sure.
Okay, before we wrap up these legacies, though, we absolutely have to talk about the Walt Disney connection.
Oh, we can't skip Disney.
Because Disney treated the 1964 New York World's Fair as basically a massive corporate testing ground.
He essentially used the massive crowds of the expo to beta test his engineering.
Right.
Walt Disney's Wed Enterprises was contracted to create several exhibits and rides for corporate pavilions at that fair.
They built It's a Small World for the UNICEF Pavilion,
Right.
and Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln for the state of Illinois.
Mm.
And they used the fair to test the crowd flow, the animatronics, the water systems.
Well, logistics.
Yeah. And when the fair closed, those rides were packed up and moved directly to Disneyland, where they are still operating today.
Which is amazing on its own.
Yeah.
But Disney stole more than just rides from the World's Fair playbook.
Oh, totally.
He absorbed the entire philosophy. The very concept of a permanent centralized showcase of global culture and technology, that was the seed that eventually became Disney's EP theme park in Florida.
Right. It features international pavilions surrounding a lagoon, corporate exhibits concerning technology and the future.
EP is essentially a World's Fair that just never closes.
To me, World's Fairs operate like a massive, multi-billion-dollar traveling circus.
That's a good analogy.
They roll into town, demand impossible amounts of money in concrete, set up an unbelievable futuristic spectacle, and then, occasionally accidentally leave behind a monument that ends up defining a city's entire skyline forever.
It captures the fleeting magic and the permanent impact perfectly.
So, as we wrap up this journey today, we've seen how these events evolved in scale and ambition.
Massively.
From showcasing bohemian manufacturing techniques to regional lords in 1791, to debuting the telephone to a stunned public.
So literally giving us Major League Baseball team names.
Right. And leaving behind architectural wonders from the Eiffel Tower to the Space Needle.
And I think the key takeaway for you, listening right now, is that history isn't just trapped in textbooks or Wikipedia articles.
Not at all.
It's alive in the public parks, the convention centers, and the skylines all around you. The next time you see a wildly out-of-place tower or a massive park complex in the middle of a dense city, you might just be standing in the footprint of a forgotten World's Fair.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. In today's highly connected era, you can instantly stream the cultural achievements and technological innovations of any nation straight to your phone in 4K resolution.
Yeah, the world is a lot smaller now.
You can take a virtual reality tour of a factory in Tokyo while sitting on your couch.
Right.
So, will the physical multi-million-dollar World's Fair eventually become an obsolete relic of the past?
It's a fair question.
Or, despite all our screens and digital connectivity, is the fundamental human need to physically gather, build giant, defiant monuments, and experience a temporary world city together actually stronger than ever? When we look back at the accidental permanence of these monuments, maybe we're just wired to build big things and stand in awe of them side by side.
I was actually thinking back to being a kid the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, specifically like sitting at the kitchen table with a brand new pack of Play-Doh.
Oh, right. The really bright ones.
Exactly. You've got that brilliant neon pink, the electric blue, the bright sunny yellow. And in your childish, optimistic brain, you just think, hey, if I smash all of these together, I'm going to get the most spectacular rainbow supercolor ever created.
Which is a totally logical thought for a kid, honestly.
Right. So you start mashing them up, the colors swirl for a second, and then you get mud, just a sad, lumpy, grayish brown.
It is such a harsh introduction to the physical world. You expect a symphony, and physics just hands you a dial tone.
It really does. And you just
Yeah.
sit there wondering what went wrong. Well, that little heartbreak is actually our entry point today. Welcome to a deep dive into color theory.
Yes, and there is so much to cover here.
There really is. We are pulling from a massive, comprehensive Wikipedia article on the subject, and our mission today is to completely deconstruct everything you think you know about color.
Which is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely. From why that classic color wheel we all had to memorize in elementary school is, well, technically flawed, to how your brain, the lighting in your room, and even your cultural background are literally altering the colors you see right in front of you.
It really forces a perspective shift, I think. Because making a color isn't just about matching what we see in nature.
Right.
It is this epic, ongoing battle between the strict physics of light and the incredibly messy chemistry of pigments. And it's a battle that has been raging for centuries.
Which is wild to me because I always thought of color theory as just art class stuff, like how to paint a nice bowl of fruit or something.
I mean, that's what most of us are taught, but it's much bigger than that. Color theory isn't one single unified scientific discipline.
Okay.
It's this historical body of knowledge where deeply subjective artistic experiences and cold, hard, objective science are constantly colliding.
So it's not just like pure math.
Not at all. Think about major theme parks like Disney, for example. Yeah. They use these exact principles to completely manipulate your aesthetic experience as you walk through their gates. They are using the science of human perception, like how colors advance or recede, how they trigger specific psychological states, to quietly dictate how you feel in any given space.
Okay, so before we can talk about how theme parks are, hacking our brains or how to mix the perfect paint, I feel like we need to figure out where our core rules of color even came from.
We do, yeah.
Because humanity didn't just wake up one day with the standardized Pantone color of the year.
Far from it. If we look at antiquity, early musings on color were heavily philosophical. Like Aristotle wrote a treatise called On Colors, where he theorized that all colors were essentially just blends of light and dark, dictated by the four elements.
Okay, very philosophical.
Right. But if we go even earlier to ancient India around 200 BCE, there's the Natya Shastra.
What's that?
It's a foundational text on performing arts, and it possessed a highly functional, practical theory of color. But they didn't use the primary colors we know today.
They didn't?
No. Their primary building blocks were black, blue, yellow, and red.
Wait, black was a primary color?
In their system, yes. And they had strict formulas for it. They described exactly how to mix these primary bases to get secondary colors for stage makeup and costumes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like mixing white and red gave you quote-unquote lotus, and mixing blue and red gave you a dark red. They were treating color like a precise recipe for visual storytelling.
So they're basically already treating color as a technology.
Exactly.
But the science obviously evolved from there, because Aristotle's idea that color is just a mix of light and dark feels a little, I don't know, simplistic.
It was very simplistic, and it was eventually dismantled during the Islamic Golden Age.
Yeah.
Scholars like Ibn Sina and later European thinkers who were heavily influenced by that era, like the 13th century scholar Robert Grosseteste.
Okay, what did he do?
Well, he realized that Aristotle's linear scale from black to white was fundamentally flawed. Grosseteste actually used early geometry to prove that there are multiple color paths to get from black to white.
Wait, what do you mean by multiple paths?
Okay, imagine you have pure white light on one side and pure black darkness on the other. Aristotle thought there was just one road connecting them, and all colors lived on that single road.
Right, like a gradient.
Exactly. But Grosseteste showed that color operates in 3 dimensions. You can get from black to white by traveling the red path, or the blue path, or the green path.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, by mapping things like clarity and intensity, he proved color wasn't a single slider, but this massive, multi-dimensional space.
That feels like it sets the stage perfectly for the big guns of physics to step in. Because when I think of the science of color, my brain immediately goes to Isaac Newton and the prism.
And you'd be right. Newton is the pivotal turning point here. In 1704, he publishes Optics, proving that white light isn't a blank canvas. It is actually a spectrum of different wavelengths.
He breaks light apart, right?
He breaks light apart with a prism and shows that color is a physical property of light itself. It's pure physics. But here's the friction. A lot of people hated Newton's purely mathematical approach.
Wait, why? I mean, you can't really argue with a prism. The light just does what it does.
No, you can't argue with the light, but you can argue with the experience of the light.
Oh, I see.
By the 19th century, thinkers like the German poet Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and the French chemist Michel-Eugène Chirul, they pushed back hard. Goethe famously studied the colored shadows cast on snow, and he realized Newton's math was missing the human element.
The subjective part.
Right. Goethe and Chirul focused on the psychological and perceptual effects of color. They asked, sure, light has a wavelength, but how does color actually behave inside the human eye and inside the mind?
So you've got the physics of light on one side and the psychology of sight on the other.
Yes. And that exact division is why the color education most of us got in school is so incredibly confusing.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is the part that kind of blew my mind in the research. The red, yellow, and blue. The RYB primary colors I spent years learning in art class.
Ah, yes. The classic RYB.
I was taught they are the absolute, undisputed building blocks of the universe. Are you telling me that's not true?
I am telling you they are not universal truths. No.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Right.
Modern color science does not recognize red, yellow, and blue as universal primary colors in the way we were taught. In fact, there is no finite combination of three colors that can produce the full visual spectrum humans can perceive.
Wait, there isn't?
No. That entire range of perception is a range we call the visual gamut, and three colors just can't cover it all.
Hold on, if they aren't scientifically pure, why did my art teacher make me memorize them? Why is the entire color wheel based on them?
Because of the physical limitations of the materials we pull out of the earth, RYB became the artist's standard, not because of pure physics, but because of the physical imperfections of chemical pigments.
So it's about the paint itself.
Exactly. Think of it as a reliance on chemical quirks.
Quirks, like the paint itself is broken.
Well, not broken, just complex. Traditional primary paints rely on a mechanism called sloped absorption curves.
Okay, let's break that down.
Sure. So a mathematically pure pigment would absorb every single color of light perfectly, except for one, bouncing only that one pure color back to your eye. But physical pigments don't do that. Think of a physical pigment like a slightly leaky coffee filter.
Okay, so it catches the grounds, but some sediment still gets through.
Precisely. Let's look at ultramarine blue as an example.
Yeah.
Straight out of the tube, at high concentrations, it absorbs almost everything and bounces back what looks like a pure, deep blue.
Right.
But that pigment's absorption curve is sloped. It's leaky. It doesn't just bounce back blue. It is secretly bouncing back a little bit of green light, too. You just can't see it when the paint is thick.
But what happens if you thin it out?
If you lower its concentration or spread it really thin, that ultramarine actually appears cyan.
So ultramarine is basically lying to us. It's blue, but it's hiding green inside.
Yes, and that hidden green quality, that leakiness, is the only reason it successfully mixes with yellow to make a vibrant green paint.
Oh,
If ultramarine were a mathematically pure blue, without that slope absorption curve, you would mix it with yellow and get a dull, lifeless gray.
so the primary colors we were taught are actually just happy accidents of chemistry. We're relying on leaky pigments that secretly contain other colors to do the heavy lifting for us.
That is the messy reality of physical paint. The old primaries depend entirely on those sloped curves to function.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. If perfect, mathematically pure primary paints don't actually exist, how do artists and printers manage to create these incredibly vibrant images? Why doesn't every painting just look like my muddy Play-Doh?
To understand how they avoid the mud, we have to establish the difference between additive color and subtractive color. They are essentially opposites.
Additive and subtractive, okay.
Additive color is what's happening on the screen of your laptop or phone right now. It relies on light. Red, green, and blue light dash RGB. In an additive system, you start with total darkness. When you add red, green, and blue light together at full intensity, they combine to create pure white light.
Right, because you're literally adding light to the darkness. But a canvas doesn't emit light.
Exactly. Painting and printing use subtractive color. You start with a white piece of paper, which is already reflecting all light back at you.
Okay.
When you put a pigment on that paper, the pigment is absorbing or subtracting certain wavelengths of light and reflecting whatever is left. So every time you add a new color to your canvas, you are subtracting more and more light.
So painting is essentially turning the room lights down a little bit with every brush stroke.
Yes.
Which means artists aren't using pure math. They're essentially hacking the chemical flaws of their paints to trick our eyes.
That's the only way to do it. Because physical red, yellow, and blue paints have inherent biases. Like a tube of red paint isn't purely red. Chemically, it leans either a little bit toward blue or a little bit toward yellow.
I want to challenge this, actually, because I literally mixed red and blue paint to make purple with my niece yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So how can you tell me they aren't pure primary colors if I'm physically using them as my base?
Well, let me ask you this. When you mixed that red and blue yesterday, did you get a vibrant, glowing, royal purple? Or did you get something that looked more like a bruised eggplant?
Yeah, definitely the eggplant. It was pretty dark.
And here is why. You likely used a red that leans slightly yellow and a blue that leans slightly red.
Oh, no.
By mixing them, you accidentally threw all three primary biases, red, blue, and yellow, into the mix. In subtractive mixing, when you combine all three, you subtract too much light. The result loses its chroma, which is the purity or vividness of the color, and it drops in value, meaning it gets physically darker.
We get the mud.
You get the mud. So to fix this, painters developed the split primary palette hack.
What's that?
Instead of just 3 primaries, they keep 6 on their palette, a warm and a cool version of each. If an artist wants a truly vibrant high chroma green, They won't just mix any blue and any yellow. They will specifically choose a green-biased blue and a green-biased yellow.
So they're removing the red entirely.
Exactly. By aligning those biases, they eliminate any trace of red, preventing the muddying effect entirely.
They are completely stacking the deck in favor of green.
They have to. It's a practical application of geometric rule. Newton actually figured out colors that are closer together on the hue circle produce more vibrant mixtures. But what really shocks people is that in the strict science of subtractive mixing, red and blue are actually secondary colors.
Wait, in paint, red and blue are secondary?
Yes. True subtractive primaries are cyan, magenta, and yellow, CMYK.
Like printer ink.
Exactly like printer ink. Magenta and cyan mix to create blues. Yellow and magenta mix to create red. Our traditional reliance on red and blue as starting points is exactly why you and your niece ended up with the eggplant instead of royal purple.
That makes so much sense now.
Right. Industrial printing systems had to abandon RYB entirely. To make mass-printed magazines economically feasible, they developed inks that perfectly absorbed only one specific wavelength of light. So cyan absorbs only red, magenta absorbs only green, yellow absorbs only blue-violet. That is how they maximize the range of printable colors.
Okay, so I've hacked my pigments. I've used cyan and magenta to get these incredibly vibrant colors on my canvas. I'm feeling like a master painter.
As you should.
But once you have those colors mixed and you place them next to each other on a wall or a website, the rules change all over again. Because color isn't a static object. It is a highly contextual illusion.
This is where human perception takes the wheel, and it goes back to Chevreul, the French chemist we mentioned earlier.
Right.
In 1839, he was hired by a famous Parisian tapestry works.
Why tapestry works?
Because the weavers were complaining that the black yarn looked dull and brownish. They thought the dye was bad. But Chevreul investigated and realized the black dye was chemically fine. The problem was optical. So he introduced the law of simultaneous contrast.
Which means what exactly for the tapestry?
He discovered that when two colors are viewed spatially, meaning right next to each other, they literally alter each other's appearance in the viewer's eye. Specifically, they shift as if they've been mixed with their neighbor's complementary color.
Let's ground this a bit. What does that actually look like to you and me in a normal room or like at the store?
Have you ever noticed how they sell tomatoes at the grocery store in those little green mesh bags?
Oh, yeah. I always just assumed it was cheap packaging.
It is a highly calculated optical illusion. Green is the complementary color to red. When your eye sees the red tomato through the green mesh, your brain naturally projects the complement of green, which is red, onto the object behind it to boost the edge contrast.
Wait, really?
Yes. The green mesh literally forces your brain to perceive the tomato as a deeper, more vibrant red than it actually is.
That is insane. So if I paint my living room yellow, the color of my blue couch is literally changing the frequency of the yellow my brain perceives.
Well, the physical light hitting your eye hasn't changed at all. The yellow paint is bouncing the exact same wavelength, but your brain processes it entirely differently because of the blue couch nearby. Color is just a neighborhood dispute over who gets to be seen.
That is wild.
And it happens temporally, too, to something called successive contrast.
Successive contrast.
Yeah. If you stare at a bright red block for a solid minute and then look away at a blank white wall, you won't see white. You will see a glowing greenish afterimage.
Why does that happen? I've definitely experienced that.
Your eye has specific cone receptors for different wavelengths. By staring at the red block, your red-sensitive cones get exhausted. They physically fatigue.
Oh, they just get tired.
Literally tired. So when you look at the white wall, which is reflecting all colors of light, your red receptors are too tired to fire, but your green and blue receptors are completely fresh. So the complementary color temporarily takes over your vision.
It just proves that we don't passively just see what is there. We are actively participating in the creation of the image.
Very much so.
And this contextual nature of color also ties into how we perceive warm and cool colors, right? I've always heard red and orange are warm, blue and green are cool. Does that have a physical basis, or is it just poetry?
It is historically derived from our natural environment. Warm colors were associated with the light of daylight or a sunset. Cool colors were associated with the diffused light of gray, overcast days. Interestingly, 19th century scientists pinpointed the absolute peak visual contrast as being between red-orange and greenish-blue.
But it's not just about a feeling of temperature, right? Painters use this to mess with our sense of physical space, don't they?
Constantly. Warm colors, which often naturally have a higher chroma and a lighter value, create a biological illusion of depth. They seem to advance toward the viewer. They pop out of the canvas.
Oh, I see.
Because of this, they are perceived as visually active and psychologically arousing. Cool colors naturally seem to recede into the background. They feel distant and calm.
So if you want a room to feel cozy and intimate, you paint it a warm color because the walls literally feel like they are advancing toward you. But if you want a tiny room to feel spacious, you paint it cool so the walls recede.
Exactly. And this highly contextual behavior is why traditional color theory often struggles to be a pure science. It tries to categorize blue and yellow as static things, but they aren't things. They are flexible sensory experiences that change depending on what's next to them, how long you've been looking at them, and what they remind you of.
Okay, so if my brain is constantly altering colors based on what's sitting next to them, how do interior designers or graphic artists even do their jobs?
It's tough.
Right. How do you pick a good or harmonious color scheme if the rules keep changing? We're moving from physics into pure human psychology now.
And the math here becomes practically impossible because a healthy human eye can perceive roughly 2.3 million different colors.
2.3 million.
Yes. So the idea that we can create a flawless predictive formula for perfect color harmony is fundamentally unsound. But that hasn't stopped the industry from trying, of course.
That's why.
Today, the 21st century equation for color harmony isn't just about the colors themselves. It's a complex function where you take the color data and multiply it by a massive list of human variables.
Like what?
You have to factor in individual differences like the viewer's age, gender, personality, and current mood. You have to factor in cultural experiences, contextual ambient lighting, perceptual effects like that simultaneous contrast with the tomatoes, and finally, time, meaning the prevailing social trends of the decade.
So what does this all mean? If we can see 2.3 million colors, and our reaction to them is based on our age, our mood, what time of day it is, and whether we're standing next to a blue couch, is the concept of a universal color scheme, basically astrology for designers.
I think graphic designers might get mad at you for saying that, but scientifically, sort of.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there are basic color wheel schemes that have been established for a long time: monochromatic, analogous, triadic. These are combinations that sit at specific geometric angles to each other on the color wheel. But they're strictly guidelines. They're not universal laws of physics.
Got it.
Black and white work universally because they cleanly manipulate value brightness and darkness without fighting over hue. But beyond that, harmony is highly subjective.
And that subjectivity applies heavily to color symbolism too, doesn't it? Because as humans, we love to assign a mutable meaning to colors. Red means stop, green means go.
We do. But that symbolism is entirely bound to culture. It's not an immutable law of nature. Take red, for instance.
Okay.
Depending entirely on where and when you live, red can symbolize romance, or good luck, or extreme danger, or mourning. There is no inherent danger wavelength in red light. We have just learned to associate it with things like fire or blood over millennia of evolution and cultural reinforcement.
So if someone tries to sell me like an expensive red light therapy lamp, telling me it's going to definitively cure my anxiety or boost my mood just because the light is red,
You should probably hold on to your money. Well, combinations of colors in an environment can definitely evoke feelings based on learned associations. Any claim that a specific color universally cures an ailment, which is an alternative medicine concept called chromotherapy, well, it lacks absolute scientific backing. It really is all about context and personal association.
it is so wild to think about. Whether you are trying to choose a shirt that won't look washed out on your morning Zoom call, or you're standing in the hardware store agonizing over a paint swatch for your kitchen, or just looking at the incredibly saturated, bright apps on your phone, you are constantly interacting with thousands of years of physics, chemistry, and cultural conditioning.
Every single day.
Every time you open your eyes, you're experiencing a live collision of Isaac Newton's math, Kosuru's psychology, and the chemical quirks of sloped absorption curves.
It's honestly a miracle we can agree on what color a stop sign is.
Serious?
But it leaves us with something quite profound to chew on, I think. We've established that the colors we see are entirely manufactured by the 3 specific cone receptors in our individual human eyes. We are essentially trapped in our own biological hardware.
Right.
So imagine the reality of the mantis shrimp.
The mantis shrimp.
Yes. While humans have 3 types of color receptive cones, the mantis shrimp has up to 16.
16.
Which means they are seeing a spectrum of colors, combinations, and ultraviolet contrasts that human language doesn't even have names for.
That is, I can't even picture that.
You can't. So next time you look around your beautifully painted, perfectly harmonized living room, just ask yourself, What spectacular, unimaginable colors are bouncing right in front of your face, completely invisible to you, simply because you don't have the hardware to see them.
You know, when most of us picture a robot, we immediately default to, like, the movies.
Oh, for sure.
We picture these shiny metal humanoids with glowing red eyes or maybe clunky talking trash cans rolling around a spaceship.
Right, exactly. The classic Hollywood tropes.
Yeah, but I read a fact today that it absolutely shattered my perspective.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the next time you board a modern passenger airliner, right, you walk down the jet bridge, take your seat, you are essentially stepping inside a giant flying robot.
It's true. It really is.
Like, the autopilot system can control that plane entirely through takeoff, normal flight, landing. The two human pilots sitting up in the cockpit, they're mostly just there to manage the machine.
They're monitoring systems.
All right. While the robot actually flies you through the sky. It's wild.
It forces a complete reset of how we define these machines, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because our cultural imagination of robotics is, it's so tied up in that fiction you mentioned that we often miss the reality of what the field actually is today. So our mission in this deep dive is to look past all that. We're looking at a massive stack of interdisciplinary research today. We want to understand what robots actually are, how they're engineered to physically move and feel, and really how they are fundamentally rewriting the future of our workforce.
And our society.
Exactly. We aren't just looking at the what today, but the why. Why are these machines designed the way they are? And, why does this matter to your daily life?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before a robot can cook your dinner or, I don't know, build your car or explore Mars, we have to understand its basic anatomy.
Right, the physical building blocks.
Yeah, moving from the abstract concept to the actual hardware. And the foundational design of any robot comes down to four main aspects. You've got a power source, mechanical construction, a control system, and software.
Yep.
But the part that absolutely fascinated me in the sources was the mechanical construction, specifically the actuators.
The muscles.
Right. These are basically the robot's muscles. They take stored energy and convert it into actual physical movement.
And the way engineers are building those muscles right now is, it's undergoing a massive evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because for a long time, the industry standard was just standard electric motors.
Like the ones in RC cars or whatever?
Sort of, yeah. You had your basic brushed and brushless DC motors for smaller portable robots, and then these heavy-duty AC motors to drive massive industrial arms on factory floors.
Right.
But engineers are moving far beyond just standard gears and spin-it magnets now. Take piezoelectric motors, for instance.
Piezoelectric?
Yes. So instead of using electromagnetism to create rotation, these motors use tiny piezoceramic elements.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, when you apply an electric field to these ceramics, they literally change shape. They vibrate thousands of times a second.
Wow. Which means they can achieve incredibly precise movements, right? Like down to the nanometer.
Down to the nanometer.
That is insane.
It is. They offer this incredible combination of resolution, speed, and force for their tiny footprint. But of course, if you need broader, more powerful movements, engineers are looking at pneumatic artificial muscles.
Right. The research called these air muscles, I think?
Yes, air muscles. They're specialized tubes designed to mimic biological muscles. When forced air is pumped inside them, they can expand up to 42%.
That's a huge expansion.
It really is. And beyond that, there are electroactive polymers. These are plastics that can contract substantially when exposed to electricity.
Like, how substantially?
We're talking up to a 380% activation strain.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, those have actually been utilized to build realistic facial muscles in humanoid robotics, which we'll get to later.
Okay, but the material that really stopped me in my tracks was the elastic carbon nanotubes.
Oh, yes. The strength on those is unbelievable.
I was looking at the physical specs on these things, and it's staggering. It said an 8-millimeter wire of this material, which is, only about 3/8 of an inch thick?
Yeah, thinner than your pinky finger.
Right. That tiny wire could feasibly replace a human bicep.
It's incredible.
That kind of physical power packed into something so small, it means future robots won't just match human strength. They're going to easily outperform us by orders of magnitude.
Which introduces a massive engineering problem, actually.
Because they're too strong.
Exactly. Strength is useless and highly dangerous. really, if it isn't controlled. If a robot is incredibly strong and perfectly rigid, it essentially becomes a wrecking ball.
Oh, right.
If it swings an arm to pick up a cup and miscalculates by an inch,
It just shatters the table.
right through the table.
Okay, so that brings up a fascinating concept from the reading called series elastic actuation, or CEA.
CA, right.
If I'm understanding the mechanics correctly, it's about introducing intentional softness into the machine.
Yes,
I picture it kind of like the cartilage in human joints or like the shock absorbers on a mountain bike.
that's a great analogy.
You want some elasticity between the rigid motor and the thing it's interacting with so the machine doesn't just destroy whatever it touches.
What's fascinating here is that this intentional elasticity is fundamentally about safety and energy efficiency.
How so?
Well, historically, industrial robots were kept in heavy steel cages on factory floors.
Right, because they were way too dangerous for humans to be near.
Exactly. They were perfectly rigid, so any collision transferred a massive amount of kinetic energy. But by introducing an elastic element between the motor actuator and the load, SEA provides immediate shock absorption.
It literally softens the blow.
Yes, it lowers the reflected inertia. So if a robot with SEA accidentally collides with a human, or just an unexpected object in an unstructured environment.
The elastic element absorbs it before the motor even registers the collision.
Exactly. It makes the machine incredibly robust, but physically forgiving.
But here's the catch, right? Having incredibly strong, forgiving muscles is great, but all that power means nothing if the machine is just bolted to the floor.
Right, it has to move.
Before it can interact with our world, it has to be able to navigate it. So how do we get these things to actually move? The engineering contrast between wheels and legs is wild to me.
Oh, it's a huge debate in robotics.
Because wheels are incredibly efficient. Like, there's that robot from Carnegie Mellon University called a ball bot.
The ball bot, yes.
It's about the size and width of a person, and it balances entirely on one single round ball.
Balancing on a single point like that relies on inverted pendulum dynamics.
Which sounds incredibly complicated.
It's actually something you intuitively understand. If you've ever tried to balance a heavy broomstick upright on the palm of your hand,
Oh, yeah. You're constantly darting your hand around to keep it from falling.
exactly, the top of the broom wants to fall, so your hand has to constantly dart back and forth underneath its center of gravity just to keep it upright.
So the ball bot is doing that.
Yes, mathematically. It's using internal motors to constantly drive the ball to counterbalance a fall, adjusting hundreds of times a second.
Which is brilliant for flat surfaces.
Right, flat surface.
But we live in a world of stairs, curbs, uneven terrain, which is why walking on two legs by pedal locomotion is the ultimate goal.
It is the holy grail of movement.
But anyone who has seen early attempts at this knows it's an absolute nightmare.
Oh, it's so difficult.
Like, take Honda's famous Asimo robot. It relies on an algorithm called the zero moment point, or ZMP.
ZMP, yes.
The robot's onboard computer constantly runs these complex physics calculations, right? Trying to keep the total inertial forces, like Earth's gravity, plus the acceleration of the robot's own limbs, exactly opposed by the floor pushing back on the foot.
Right, the goal is to leave absolutely no moment or rotational force that would cause the robot to tip over.
The math is flawless, but the physical execution.
It's heavily constrained.
Yeah.
Because the ZMP algorithm requires keeping the foot perfectly flat against the floor to calculate that opposing force, the robot has to keep its knees perpetually bent to absorb any shock.
Right, which is why observers always joke that Asimo looks like it desperately needs to use the bathroom when it walks.
It does. It looks incredibly stiff and unnatural, and it requires perfectly flat floors.
But engineers are moving past that stiffness now, right? Toward dynamic balancing.
Yes, thankfully.
Like, there's a bipedal robot called Dexter, built by Anybots. Instead of trying to prevent a fall completely, it constantly monitors its momentum and practically throws its feet forward to catch itself.
To the point where it can literally perform jumps.
It can jump. And then you have passive dynamics, where the robot uses the natural momentum of swinging its limbs to power the next step.
Which is much closer to how you and I walk.
Yeah, we don't calculate floor resistance. We just lean forward and catch ourselves.
Exactly. And that approach can actually increase efficiency tenfold over the ZMP algorithm.
Tenfold. That's huge.
And that pursuit of movement efficiency isn't limited to the ground either.
Oh, right, the flying ones.
There is an entire subfield dedicated to biomimetic flying robots. These are machines taking direct inspiration from mammals, birds, and insects.
Because traditional drones are kind of inefficient, right?
Very. Traditional aerial drones use fixed propellers, which are loud and consume massive amounts of energy just to hover. But biomimetic robots use flapping wings to generate lift and thrust.
Like a bird.
Like a bird. Flapping wings drastically increase aerial maneuverability and reduce the energy consumption required to stay aloft.
Okay, I have to push back a little on the whole engineering marvel narrative here, though.
How come?
Well, looking at this research, it feels like human engineers aren't actually building the best machines from scratch. They're basically just cheating off of Mother Nature's test.
That's a funny way to put it.
I mean, they're just copying millions of years of animal evolution. I'm reading about bat-inspired robots with specialized shock absorbers for landing, flying squirrel prototypes, raptors with adjustable feathered wings to prevent aerodynamic stalling.
Even tiny robotic beetles.
Exactly. It's all just copied from nature.
Well, cheating is a harsh word, but you're not wrong. I mean, why reinvent the wheel when evolution has spent 500 million years doing the rigorous R&D for you? Evolution has already solved the most complex fluid dynamics problems on Earth. Consider this. There's a robotic fish that models carangiform swimming.
Carangiform.
Yes. It's the specific undulating way certain fish move the back half of their bodies and tails. Engineers replicated that biological movement, and the robotic fish achieved greater than 90% propulsive efficiency.
90%?
Yes. It accelerates and maneuvers far better than any man-made submarine or boat, and it creates significantly less water disturbance.
That's wild.
In fact, back in 2014, one of these robotic fish actually outperformed some real biological fish in average maximum velocity and endurance.
Wait, it beat the actual fish?
It beat the actual fish.
Okay, so we have carbon nanotube muscles, machines that can balance like a broomstick on a ball, jump on two legs, flap like a bat, and apparently outswim an actual fish.
Yes, quite the resume.
But moving fast is incredibly dangerous if the machine is blind and numb.
Absolutely.
All that beautiful locomotion means nothing if it just crushes everything it touches. So how do we give a machine a sense of touch? We all know about LiDAR, radar, and sonar, right?
Bouncing lasers or sound-off objects to map a room.
Yeah, so the robot doesn't walk into a wall, but the holy grail of robotics right now seems to be tactile sensing.
Giving a machine a true sense of touch is arguably more difficult than teaching it to walk.
Really?
Oh, yes. Current robotic hands receive a fraction of the tactile information your biological hand does, but engineers are closing that gap. Recent breakthroughs have developed a tactile sensor array that physically mimics the mechanical properties and touch receptors of human fingertips.
And the construction of this is amazing. It has a rigid internal core surrounded by a conductive fluid, which is all contained within a flexible elastomeric skin.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The mechanism here is brilliant. When that artificial skin touches an object, the pressure physically deforms the fluid path around the electrodes inside the finger.
Changes the flow.
Right. Think of the conductive fluid as a fast-moving river. When the robot presses its finger against a surface, it's like dropping a boulder into that river. It alters the electrical current's flow.
And by measuring those electrical impedance changes, the computer can instantly map the exact forces and pressure the finger is receiving.
To put it simply, think about trying to pick up a raw egg while wearing a thick, rigid winter glove.
A classic problem.
You have zero tactile feedback, so you either drop the egg because you aren't gripping hard enough, or you just completely crush it.
Right.
High-resolution tactile feedback allows the machine to adjust its grip dynamically in real time.
And the real-world applications of that technology are life-changing.
Oh, for prosthetics, right?
Yes. Back in 2009, scientists in Europe and Israel integrated this kind of tactile feedback into a prosthetic hand. Patients using the prosthesis were able to actually sense objects through the artificial fingertips.
This must have been incredible for them.
It was. Because they had that feedback, they could write with a pen, type on a keyboard, perform fine motor movements that are literally impossible with a numb prosthetic.
And it changes industrial robotics too, right?
Absolutely. It fundamentally changes end effectors, which are the tools at the end of a robotic arm. Instead of friction jaws that use sheer crushing force to hold an object, factories now use soft, compliant suction cups powered by vacuum generators.
Because it won't break things.
Exactly. That natural compliance prevents damage to fragile items during manufacturing or packaging.
Okay, so touching an egg is data collection. But collecting data isn't enough, right? The robot needs software to make sense of that data, and more importantly, to make sense of us.
Yes, the cognitive side.
That leads us directly into human-robot interaction, or HRI. The literature makes it very clear that interacting with humans is technically grueling for a machine.
It really is. Recognizing human speech in real time is a massively difficult computational problem.
Because human speech is chaotic.
Extremely chaotic. When you or I speak, we intuitively understand each other. But for a computer parsing audio waves, the sound of a specific word varies wildly based on your regional accent.
The background acoustics of the room.
Exactly. Your volume, the specific word you spoke immediately prior, and even your biological health.
Like if you have a cold.
Yes, if you have a head cold, your acoustic signature changes. Translating that chaotic acoustic data into reliable, executable code is a monumental hurdle.
And people have been trying to solve this for decades. The history here is wild. There was a guy named Michael J. Freeman who developed a teaching robot all the way back in 1974.
For elementary students in the Bronx, right?
Yeah. He literally had to invent a way to convert digital computer memory into rudimentary verbal speech using pre-recorded computer disks just to get the machine to interact.
We've come a long way from 1974 to modern emotional robotics.
We really have. Now you have Hanson Robotics creating these highly expressive synthetic faces. They use an elastic polymer rubber skin mesh animated by dozens of subsurface motors all embedded over a metal skull.
It's visually stunning.
And then you have machines like Kismet, which engages in social exchanges with a vast range of facial expressions, and Robin the Robot, which uses AI to analyze emotions and comfort children experiencing stress and anxiety in medical clinics.
It's incredible work.
But I have to ask a direct question here.
Go for it.
Why go through the terrifying trouble of putting a rubber face on a robot? Why do we need our machines to have a personality?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to human evolutionary psychology and a field called effective computing.
Effective computing.
Right, which is the processing and simulation of human emotions by AI. Human brains are hardwired for pareidolia.
Meaning we look for faces in things.
We look for faces in absolutely everything, and we are biologically programmed to read facial expressions to determine threat levels.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if a machine in a hospital is approaching a child to draw blood, an expressionless metal box triggers a deep evolutionary predator response.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. But a rubber face that smiles hijacks our evolutionary biology, tricking our brains into trusting it. Studies show that for many people, interacting with a socially expressive robot can drastically reduce their negative feelings or anxieties toward machines.
But it can also backfire, right? The uncanny valley effect.
Yes, the uncanny valley.
If the face is slightly off, it bolsters strong negative prejudices. It's just creepy.
Very creepy. But the fundamental reality is that if these machines are going to exist in our domestic environments, our hospitals, our elder care facilities,
the way we command them must be intuitive.
Exactly. People with absolutely no technological skills need to be able to work alongside them comfortably.
And working alongside them is no longer some distant, abstract future. It is happening right now. These socially adept, physically capable machines are rapidly moving out of the laboratory and into the global job market.
They are everywhere.
The applications we are seeing in the sources are wild. You've got Spice Kitchen, which ran fully robotic food bowl restaurants in Massachusetts where machines cooked the meals.
Oh, and AI-assisted precision agriculture, completely automating complex farming tasks.
And you have the reality of lights-out factories.
Yes, lights out.
IBM had a keyboard factory in Texas that was fully automated, meaning they could literally turn off the lights because there were no human eyes that needed to see the assembly line, and that was as far back as 2003.
The efficiency and productivity gains of automation are undeniable, but, they come with a profound macroeconomic cost.
Which we have to talk about.
We do. A 2017 study found that automation alone puts 47% of all U.S. jobs at eventual risk.
47%. That is half the workforce.
And theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking warned in 2016 that the automation of factories has already decimated traditional manufacturing jobs, and the rise of advanced AI is likely to extend this job destruction deep into the middle classes.
Right.
His assessment was that eventually only the most caring, highly creative, or supervisory roles might remain untouched by automation.
At the same time, the transition isn't just about replacement, is it?
Not entirely, no.
Because there is a massive rise in cobots collaborative robots. Humans are still vastly superior at light-duty jobs involving unpredictable creativity, nuanced decision-making, and physical flexibility.
Right, machines struggle with that.
So cobots are designed to work safely in close spaces with humans, taking over the dirty, dangerous, or physically monotonous work.
Which is where that series elastic actuation we talked about comes in handy.
Exactly, because they're safe to be around. Think about your own job for a second. How much of your 9 to 5 is repetitive data entry, sorting, or heavy lifting?
Too much of it, probably.
Imagine a workspace where a cobot does 100% of those mundane tasks, leaving you only with the high-level creative decision-making. And building those machines is an industry in itself. A global data report projects the robotics sector will hit $568 billion by 2030.
That's $500 billion.
So what does this all mean for you? You have to contextualize this shift for your own career trajectory. Are you losing a job to an algorithm, or are you gaining a highly efficient mechanical coworker?
This raises an important question, macroeconomically speaking. The massive displacement of routine workers is leading to serious, high-level proposals around universal basic income to replace lost wages for those who cannot transition into creative or supervisory roles.
Right, which is a highly debated topic.
Extremely debated. Meanwhile, several European countries are officially including robotics integration in their national economic programs, specifically trying to promote healthy, safe cooperation between human operators and cobots.
To boost national productivity without devastating the working class?
Exactly. The transition of the global workforce requires deliberate, thoughtful policy right now, regardless of where you stand politically on solutions like UBI.
And while society scrambles to figure out the economic policies for today, the engineers are already designing the robots of tomorrow.
The frontier.
Let's look at the absolute frontier of this technology. One of the most mind-blowing concepts we uncovered is evolutionary robotics.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Instead of a human software engineer sitting down and meticulously coding every single behavior, researchers are using evolutionary computation. They basically create a simulation, drop a massive population of digital robots into it, and let them compete using a mathematical fitness function.
It is literal digital natural selection.
Literal evolution.
Let's say the goal is to get a simulated bipedal robot to walk across a room.
Yeah.
In generation 1, they all fall over immediately.
Naturally.
The fitness function measures which robot fell the furthest distance from the starting line. The ones that perform the worst are deleted, essentially killed off.
Wow.
The simulation takes the underlying code from the ones that fell a few inches further, combines and mutates their code, and breeds a new generation.
And they just repeat this.
They repeat this process thousands of times. Over many generations in a simulation, a highly capable, completely organic-looking walking behavior emerges, and no human engineer directly coded it.
The machine teaches itself how to exist. And where does that trajectory ultimately take us? Professor Hans Moravec from Carnegie Mellon's Robotics Institute predicted a timeline for robotic intelligence way back in 1997.
Moravec's timeline, right?
He estimated they would reach the mental capacity of a lizard by 2010, a mouse by 2020, then a monkey, and eventually hit human-level cognitive capacity by around 2045.
And that timeline wasn't even factoring in quantum robotics.
What is that?
Quantum robotics is the study of running these complex neural networks and robotic algorithms on quantum computers, giving them processing power that vastly outperforms traditional digital brains.
I don't even know how to process that.
We are looking at an exponential curve in capabilities. We are moving away from rigid machines that simply execute rote, pre-programmed tasks toward highly adaptive systems that learn through simulated evolution, process information on a quantum level, and alter their own behaviors based on environmental feedback.
It really is a staggering journey. I mean, we started today looking at the literal nuts and bolts, piezoelectric artificial muscles vibrating thousands of times a second, and ballbots balancing like a broomstick on a hand.
Yes, mechanical foundations.
We explored how these machines physically feel the world through conductive fluid skin, how they manipulate our trust using emotional synthetic faces, and how they are fundamentally reshaping our entire global economy with the rise of the workplace cobot.
I want to leave you with a final thought that builds on everything we've explored today.
Please do.
If evolutionary robotics allows machines to adapt, iterate, and evolve purely through digital natural selection, completely free of human coding, and quantum robotics grants them a level of processing power that we can barely comprehend,
Yeah.
At what point do we stop thinking of robots as simply programmed tools and start viewing them as an independent synthetic species evolving right alongside us?
Wow, now there is a thought to keep you awake tonight.
True.
The next time you look up and see a passenger airliner cruising at 30,000 feet, remember, you're looking at a giant flying robot, and it is just the beginning. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go look at the machines in your own life through a brand new lens.